Yeah, if you go through that video, oh, congrats. There was a problem with the settings, and perhaps I'll redo the video. But for now, we move. So we want to discuss the sinus venosus real quick. So the sinus venosus is this sinus, basically like an opening that receives blood from from the inferior part, receives blood here, which it pumps to the atria, the primitive atria. So sinus venosus, and there's a horn. Both have horns, right and left horns, right? So each of the horns receives blood supply from 3 vessels, right? You can call them the VUC. V is the vitelline vein. U is the umbilical, while C is the common cardinal. Common because it has other branches like supracardinal and the rest. So yeah, so what is particular about this is the changes. Remember, at some point there's a left to right predominance of blood supply. So there are some changes at the 5th week and at the 10th week. Okay, so call this how do we put this? UV. Let's say LCC and RUV. If you need an acronym to decode the changes that happens. Now, RUV because you have the umbilical vein here and the vitelline vein here disappearing. Okay, so you have the right umbilical vein and then the left vitelline vein disappearing at about the 5th week. Okay, but at about the 10th week, you also have the left common cardinal vein being obliterated. So you have disappearance of the left vitelline vein, the left common cardinal, and the left umbilical. Okay, so this changes the morphology of what the sinus venosus looks like. You see, because there's a predominance of left to right movement of blood, what actually happens is this: the right becomes more dominant, such that you now have the sinus venosus being connected directly to the right. Okay, but what happens to this? So the configuration looks somewhat like this. So you have the sinus venosus with the right horn. Okay, and remember the cardinal, so it usually receives from the vitelline and the cardinal. So you have something like this, right? Vitelline, cardinal. Okay, right? But for the left now connects to the right, as opposed to connecting directly to the sinus venosus. It now connects to the right. Okay, and this structure would eventually become, or this remnant, so to say, would eventually become the coronary sinus. and a part eventually becomes the oblique vein. But that is the importance of this left side as opposed to the right side, which becomes more predominant. Okay, now let me show you a quick schematic of how the heart folds. Now remember the diagram that I drew from the last lecture. Okay, so let's assume this is the sinus venosus, and this is the primitive atrium, and this is the primitive ventricle, and this is the bulbus cordis, eventually connecting to the dorsal aorta. Okay, so which is what I've tried to represent here. Now, how does the heart loop? Remember I mentioned that the heart loops. You see, this bulbus cordis, this part here, alongside the part of the primitive ventricle, is going to go down. Remember, the heart is being suspended. The heart is being suspended this way. Okay, so what happens is, imagine this is the ventral surface, this is the dorsal surface. So this one actually goes down ventrally. It goes down. So basically what you have is it goes down this way, downward and ventrally, whilst this part containing the primitive atrium and the sinus venosus is going to go upwards this way, just something like this. It's just a schematic here anyway, such that the bulbus cordis is now in front with the ventricle by the side and the primitive atrium at the back. Okay, with the sinus venosus here. Now remember that this sinus venosus already looks like this. So this sinus venosus is going to combine with the atrium. So you have the sinus venosus combining with the atrium or the atria, right? Especially the right atria. It combines with the right atria. So you have this combining with the right atria. Okay, so when it combines, so let's assume this, we have a window into the atria. When this part combines with the atria, the right atria, let's assume this is the right atria, looking inside from the atria, after the combination, this is what you see. So imagine we're in the atria and we're looking into the atria. This is what you see. What you see is our valves with nothing inside, with the space inside connecting. So what you see are valves. You see a valve here, you see a valve here. Now remember, this is the right atrium, so there's going to be a septum here that's going to be growing downwards, sort of. Now what happens first of all is that the valves will fuse at this tip. They're going to fuse to form what we call the septum spurium. Okay, I hope I'm not confused here. They fuse to form the septum spurium. Now, this septum spurium, alongside the left part of the valve, is going to join with this septum, the actual septum that's going to divide the two atria. So you have this septum spurium with the left part of the valve joining with this to form the proper septum, atria, septum. Okay, which leaves this right valve. Okay, so coming down this way, all you have is now this right valve. Right, first of all, this right valve, the superior aspect of the right valve is going to disintegrate, such that all you have is this inferior aspect of the right valve, and this inferior aspect of the right valve is now going to serve as the valve of the inferior vena cava. You know the IVC drains into the right atrium, so you're going to look at the valve of the IVC, and it's also going to serve as the valve of the coronary sinus. So that's what you have. So you have the valve of the IVC, valve of the coronary sinus. Now remember this image we have here. So what you have is the horn, the horn and the sinus venosus that joins with the right atrium. Okay, this cardinal vein is eventually going to form the inferior vena cava. So if you've been following, you have cardinal vein eventually forming the inferior vena cava, coming this way. Remember, this already joins to the right atrium, so you have this inferior vena cava. So this inferior vena cava is going to be, imagine it goes out back this way. So you have the inferior vena cava. As blood empties into the right atrium, there is already a valve here. You also have the coronary sinus where blood goes into, and you have a valve here. So that brings us to the end of the third part of this. I hope you benefited something. Yes, just to show you what this would loop into. We're going to have the bulbus cordis in front, this way, somewhat, and the ventricles are going to be by the side of the bulbus cordis. Okay, so you have the bulbus cordis, and you have the primitive atrium out back. You have the primitive atrium out back, and you have the sinus venosus, which would have already joined with the primitive atrium. So this is what the primitive heart looks like. We're still going to talk about how this bulbus cordis is going to differentiate. The bulbus cordis has three parts. Okay, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Okay, the bulbus cordis has three parts. Bulbus, and this second part is called the conus cordis. Conus for cone, and this would eventually form the smooth outflow tract, whilst this first part is going to form the atria. Not the atria, it's going to form the aorta and pulmonary trunk, and this first part is also what we call the truncus arteriosus. Okay, truncus arteriosus, the conus cordis, and you have this latter part of the bulbus cordis, which is going to contribute to form the right ventricle. Okay, so I hope that is a bit clear, and we'll move on to the fourth part later.